Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am in TED Talks 101 with instructor Kim Sheffer, and I will be giving my presentation on how to beat speech anxiety. So first I want to talk about what speech anxiety is. So speech anxiety is also known as public speaking anxiety, or PSA, and that is the anxiety that is felt while giving or preparing to deliver a presentation to an audience. Oftentimes, when you experience public speaking anxiety, you can feel feelings of nervousness. Sometimes you can lose sleep. You can experience nausea, sweat, and there are many other symptoms related to being nervous about giving a presentation. So let's talk about why we get speech anxiety. And one of the most common ways or reasons that we experience speech anxiety is because we associate the current situation with past failures. For instance, if you sang a solo in front of your church when you were 7 years old and forgot all of the words right as it was your turn to sing, you might be fearing that you will forget all of the words to your speech as you get ready to present it. Another reason is that you're not sufficiently prepared. And this can happen when you don't practice enough or you don't know your subject very well. And sometimes, even no matter how much you practice or know your subject, you can still experience feelings of unpreparedness for it. Another reason is discomfort with personal insecurities. This one can cover a lot of different arenas. Maybe it's because of the way that you look, you're not comfortable with it. Maybe you don't like giving presentations because you're insecure with your weight and you don't want other people focused on that external aspect instead of the subject that you're talking about. Or maybe you stutter when you talk and you don't want people to be aware of that when you stand up to give a presentation. And another big reason why people experience speech anxiety is because of comparison. While listening to peers give presentations, you might feel like there's no way that you can live up to how good of a job they are doing or how good of a job that they have done. Maybe you saw them incorporate something into their speech that you didn't think of, so then you start to second guess how good you are, or how good you're going to do on your speech. So let's talk about some ways to combat speech anxiety. And the first way is practice, practice, practice. The first one I feel like is a pretty obvious one here, but you should practice so many times. They say that practice makes perfect, and even though you may not feel like you are completely perfect in your presentation, the more you practice, the more comfortable that you will start to feel with it. And as you practice, you'll get to know your subject better. You'll really get a better understanding of what you're talking about and your topic. And that being said, you should go into your presentation knowing your topic really well. And that way, if people ask you questions, then you feel comfortable answering them. And don't try to memorize your speech word for word. Become friends with it. You don't need to know it word for word because that just leaves more room if you get to a moment where you stop and kind of forget what you're going to say, then you can kind of improvise if you know your subject well, but if you know it word for word, you're going to have a harder time finding your spot. And if you just have a very good idea of what you're talking about, then you're able to confidently tell your audience about the subject. The next way to help speech anxiety is to know your audience. I feel like this isn't something that's talked about super often, but it is so important. And it's important to know the demographic of your audience. If you're speaking about a topic that is culturally inapplicable to your audience, then you'll probably have a harder time grabbing the audience's attention. Know your audience's interests. It may not be a wise choice to give a presentation that is about animal abuse to a room full of people that hate animals. While they may feel some sympathy, they are not very likely to stay interested in what you're talking about. And then I would also be aware of whether or not they already know about the topic. If your audience already has a pretty good understanding of the subject that you are speaking about, then you are able to go deeper into your presentation without having to explain yourself before diving into it. And people will probably be a little bit more interested in what you're talking about. And this one is so important. Picture yourself succeeding. Try to imagine that your nervous energy is excited energy for how well you're going to do. Combat every negative thought with a positive one. When you think about how embarrassing it will be when you fail, change that thought and turn it around and think about how good it will feel when you're done with your presentation. Picture yourself doing really well and how good it's going to feel. And if it's a class presentation, maybe picture yourself getting an A or an 100% and just the lack of stress that you're going to feel once you're finally done with that, and focus on that instead of the negative energy that you have. And make yourself a list of reasons why you will succeed. For example, you practiced a lot for this presentation. You're confident in your topic because you know it really well, and you're speaking to an audience about a subject that they're passionate. That right there is a good list of reasons of why you will succeed. And that is just something that you really need to focus on and keep telling yourself that you're going to do a good job. You're going to do well on this speech. And then you won't have as many of those negative thoughts taking over in your mind when you finally do present. So in conclusion, public speaking anxiety is a very common problem for most people, and a lot of people don't know how to get rid of it and they just live with it. But I've given you some tools to be able to help get rid of that or combat that and just make it a little easier on yourself. Practice your presentation, know it really well. Know your audience really well. That will give you a huge advantage when you go to present. And picture yourself succeeding. That is a really big one. It just makes it so much easier for you, and you'll feel so much more confident in your upcoming presentation. Now I would like everyone to take 5 minutes and reflect on what you just learned. Go ahead and pull out a piece of paper and write down the most helpful tools that you can apply to your own presentation anxiety. And then after you've thought about those, I want you to answer the following questions. Do you currently experience speech anxiety when getting ready to present? Is that something that you struggle with? I know a lot of people do, but maybe it's something that you never have. And what ideas are most applicable to you and do you think would help you in your future presentations? Just look back at that list of tools that I gave you and see which one of those you think you could use and would help you most. And then now that you have a better understanding of speech anxiety and things that can help you, I'd like you to come up with one way that I didn't have listed in the presentation that would help you combat your speech anxiety. And go ahead and tell people about it, because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. Thank you guys so much for listening to my TED Talk.